Hello and good morning. Hey, George. Thanks for joining us. Good morning, everyone who are able to join today. And this is one of our first webinars starting off during this whole COVID-19 lockout. Uh, what we wanted to do in the next few minutes is, and many iterations of this, is that we are able to get some thoughts from some of our close friends who have been working with CFF for a long time. John's been definitely one of the longest tenured friends in the CFF community. Some of you have joined on this call to ask questions and also to hear thoughts from George. And this is in line with our initial announcements of the Society of Mentors program that we started to get share our experience and our thoughts with our not only our fellow CFF community members but also with students. This webinar is going to be recorded and will be available to the wider community. But we want to definitely get started, and who to start with best other than George. George is, just many of you know probably George already, but just to reiterate for this conversation, George is the Chief Security Officer at Southern Methodist University, a Dallas native and North Texas cybersecurity leader, and an author and a speaker, and wears many hats in the community. So I welcome George to the Society of Mentors. He is signed up as a master mentor. That means he is on the hook to spend time with other mentors and train the trainers. We are starting off this journey with a collective of about 20 master mentors who would be working with about 50 or so in this quarter of mentors who are going to be working with students down the line, and also young professionals who are looking to navigate this, not only this crisis but also the upcoming challenges that we have with the economy, and definitely next to the frontline workers who have been doing their best to keep us safe and home. It is the cybersecurity professionals who have the responsibility to keep us and carry us through, right? So with that, George, over to you for the next 20 minutes or so. Let's hear your thoughts, what your experiences have been. Great to have you, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Val. I appreciate the warm introduction. So since this is a mentoring conversation, I thought I'd start out with just talking about my career journey, if that's okay. So how I got started in my career after I graduated from college, this is 20 years ago or so. I want to tell you, I haven't really told this story in a long time, but the first job I had right out of college, I actually got fired. After I got this temp job at GTE, and for those of you who don't know what GTE is, they became Verizon. A couple of companies merged together. I got a temp job there. It was supposed to just be a few months. And I thought I wanted to be a stockbroker or a financial advisor. So I was studying at night every night to get my licensing to go do that. And after about 5 or 6 months of doing that, I realized no one's going to buy retirement funds for me, because I didn't have a retirement fund. I'd never bought a house. I knew what a bond was, but it didn't make sense that I would go do that. And making cold calls wasn't that appealing. But what happened was, after I made the decision not to do that, I was kind of, well, I didn't know what to do. And there was at GTE, I was in this remote field office, and the boss there, I think he was an executive director or associate vice president or something. He had like 500 people reporting to him, and he kind of knew who I was, because I had some family that worked for GTE, but everybody was scared of him. I walked past him one day, and he was cussing out one of his vendors, and I mean, this is biblical level cursing. Like I've never heard cursing like this before, and he was a master of it. So when I got called into his office, for him to kind of give me the boot, if you will. He said, George, you have so much potential. You are going to waste it if you just stay here in this remote office, and just doing data entry or whatever I was doing at the time. So he said, look, no hard feelings. You're going to go out and make a difference in the world. You're not going to do that here. And so I think about that moment. The jobs that I've had since then, and the trajectory that put me on. But really, that it wasn't about firing me. It was about believing in me, and making me do the hard thing. Um, so a few years later, I went for through all kinds of consulting roles in telecommunications and technology. I got almost all of the Cisco certifications that you can get, other than the CCIE. And I became a network engineer. But again, there I saw that I was solving problems, but I still wasn't making a difference. Which was why I ultimately decided to go to law school, and that's how I came to be here at SMU. And that process of getting into security, I realized that as long as it took me to just figure out how computers work to become a network engineer, when I started doing security things, I actually got to start breaking things, and that was fun. That was interesting. And but again, I thought I was going to go be a lawyer or a patent lawyer or whatever. I never expected to be at SMU for as long as I had. Again, another leader stepped in and said, "Hey, I want you to stay here at SMU. I want you to do security and start to build our program." And eventually, I became the chief information security officer for SMU. But it was a step on the way. And so I think about this from both perspectives, right? As a leader, especially as a security leader, knowing that we need to develop a whole new generation of security professionals that are going to continue to protect us. I think the onus is on us to find those people, wherever they are, whether whether they're college graduates or not, whether they're in IT or not. We've got to find people and believe in them, and give them, frankly, the kick in the pants sometimes they need, to go out and do great things in their careers. Some of the best advice that I got in some of the leadership training I've done has been to get where you are today. The people that are most successful in their 40s and 50s, and the ones that become chief whatevers, are the ones that have had a variety of experiences, right? They haven't been in one role their entire career. They haven't necessarily been in IT their entire career, right? That gives them a broader perspective. They know how to do to solve all kinds of problems and to work with all kinds of people. So, if you're starting out in your career, understand that you have to seek out different challenges, right? You're not going to solve just one kind of problem forever. And in cybersecurity, we're kind of on the bleeding edge of technology, right? We're, the technology we're using today didn't exist 5 years ago, right? The way it does today. The technology we're using today, will probably be obsolete in 5 years, and there's going to be a whole new generation of tools to use, right? So if you're in IT, Microsoft, your MCSE is generally speaking the same as it was, probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So if you're called to be in security, you're going to have to be committed to lifelong learning and to not be afraid of challenges. And I think that's exciting in the security world. So I'll pivot from there to talk about why security is important. So there's this psychologist. His name is Abraham Maslow, and he created what he called the hierarchy of needs. So if you've been exposed to this, you'll probably recall the bottom tier of the hierarchy of needs is food, water, and shelter. If you're hungry, you're not necessarily going to be thinking about falling in love or being productive at work. And so you have to fill all those needs to get to a place where you can live up to your potential, right? And I think as leaders, right, we security is in our DNA, right? The reason that we came together as a species, right? We're a social animal. We've evolved to be that way, um, is for mutual protection. And we're in cybersecurity. It's very exciting to be playing so fundamental a role in our society today, right? As when you think of COVID, the healthcare workers, the food workers, those are all considered essential workers because they play an elemental role in constructing our world. And as cybersecurity leaders, the best thing for us to do is to help our communities continue to get stronger, to protect our communities, so that whether it's a Val at EY, or me at a university, um, our job is to help other people be free to live up to their potential, to do whatever it is they're doing, whether they're an accountant, whether they're a professor, whether they're some other kind of consultant, whether they're just a normal data entry person, right? We have to protect them so that they're not hungry, so that they're not concerned about the security of their company, whether their company's going to go out of business next week. That's a massive calling, and to me, going back to that kick in the pants that I got in my first job out of college, I feel like I'm making a difference, and that's exciting, to be in a field where you can make a difference, and you can see that when you come to work every day. That's also a part of the reason why I wrote my book that's coming out in a few months. It's called Well Aware, but the idea is, there are certain things that we do as leaders that we I think everyone does, but putting it in a framework in the context of security, I think it helps demystify cybersecurity. And I think we need to, my passion is, we can make a difference in security, but if we're just, totally exclusive and we're only focused on our little part of the world, we're not going to make a difference. If we can connect to other leaders, right, they're the ones making all kinds of other decisions, right? So if you are launching a new project or product, and you're not thinking about security, well, you're going to have to bolt that on after the fact. It's going to be more expensive. It's going to be harder. We're making all of our lives more difficult. If we can do that earlier on and make a difference in the beginning, that will have a much broader effect. And so part of our role as cybersecurity people needs to be, we need to be educators. We need to help other people understand security and not make it scary. If we use fear as the motivator, as the tool to get people to do our bidding, they're not going to embrace all of the other things that they need to do. Fear is a great motivator to help people to get to not do things, but fear is terrible at motivating people to do proactive things. I think if we want people to be proactive and we want people to be on our team, we need to inspire hope in them. We need to have a level of optimism, and I think if we're going to inspire that next generation of security professionals, that's where we have to be leading. So with that, Val, any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was great. Thank you for the guidance, George. I think everybody in this business and the industry has always taken a different route to arrive here. Not, but I think a lot of the young people, they have the opportunity to choose the route they want to take. Right? I mean, I don't know if it'll end where we all, are now. They may have been in more amazing places. But what are your thoughts for some of the young people who are looking to, launch a career amidst a economic downturn? Where should they focus?
I think the security industry is at an interesting crossroads. Back probably when you and I started, there were no specialists in cybersecurity. Right? If you had that title, you did everything. Whether it's running firewalls or antivirus or hardening operating systems. Whereas today, that role is a lot more specialized. So entry-level folks coming in might be working in a security operations center. They might, if they've got some experience with Kali, Linux, maybe they're doing pen testing, penetration testing. If you've got some people skills, maybe you end up kind of in the sales engineering or sales side. So I think that there's a lot of different kinds of opportunities for folks to play a role in security, depending on what their interests are, what their backgrounds are. And I think that's kind of exciting to know that there's so many things that you can do. I think there's more opportunities for people to come in and kind of hit the ground running. And I would say, I think it can be a little intimidating to come in, and not feel, if you're at the beginning of the career, you're not going to be an expert, but I think we expect people to be experts right away. And I would say, don't be afraid to ask questions. Part of why I'm so excited about the Cyber Future Foundation's mentoring program is just that there's not really, I haven't seen any mentoring program where, people can go ask questions and feel comfortable and not feel like they're being judged because, well, you're stupid because you don't know X. That's silly. I don't know X. I mean, so I think probably the number one question I've been asked, or probably 90% of the questions I've been asked over the last month, are about Zoom and Zoom security. Yeah. And I think we saw some issues with Zoom a year ago when it came to privacy and webcam settings, right? But really, I don't think anybody had taken a hard look at Zoom and all of their different, potential issues. And today we are. But if you're just reading about Zoom and all the security issues, it might be easy to make the assumption that, oh well, everybody knew that Zoom was terrible all along. Right. And I don't think that's the case. And we shouldn't have a gotcha kind of culture in security, especially. But I think that kind of culture kind of plays into this expert status, and everybody has to be the smartest person in the room, and that's not the way we get better. We get better by asking questions.
I think you just hit the nail on the head, because that's what I think the perception is, that you need to be an expert to enter the field. Not necessarily. I think that is a direct question from one of the audience members here who's asking, what would you suggest as the entry point? Because security is a pretty broad field. If you were to be a threat hunter versus a technical writer versus a program manager, and for someone who has basic IT background, what do you? Just follow the passion, or follow a certain route? Is it? Let's be a little bit prescriptive. What we want our entry level people who have some background on programming or IT to go.
So I think an easy way, if you've really got very little IT experience, you can still make a difference. If you've got good communication skills, right? Security awareness, again, is such an important role in security. You can be a security trainer. You can help write security newsletters or simulated phishing campaigns or those kinds of things. And play a role with a lot of different security folks. I'm also reading the question on the person says they have a certificate in programming. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, DevSecOps I think is huge in the industry right now. So going back to the Zoom issue, Zoom as a company has adopted a DevSecOps approach, and I think that's what's enabled them to be so responsive to last month there was a 0-day announced by a hacker, and the hacker didn't go through the normal channels of telling the company and doing responsible disclosure. They had probably their own reasons for doing that. But Zoom, issued a fix within 24 hours, which is incredible. And DevSecOps was what allowed them to do that. And I think if you can go, especially in coding, to understand, what DevSecOps is, and to build secure programming practices into wherever you go, that you're going to write your own ticket in your career. So if you're interested in that, I highly recommend the book The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim. That is really a primer for DevSecOps, but it tells you why DevSecOps is important. It gives you kind of a real world scenario where you can understand that and see that in practice. And I frankly had a visceral reaction to reading it, because the security guy in the book is like the worst person in the book.
Yeah.
And by the end he turns it around and he's a completely different kind of chief security officer. But it was hard to read. I was cringing every moment, because no, that's not the right kind. And then of course they show you what the right way to do it is at the end. But yeah, DevSecOps is awesome for someone with a background. I'm reading the thing a little more. If you've got experience as a financial analyst, that's huge. Understanding, not necessarily from an audit perspective, but being able to communicate with non-technical folks, financial folks, to talk about how you get additional budget, or how you present certain concepts to the board. Those are all incredible skills that are desperately needed in security teams.
That's right. And then they are not necessarily pure technical hands-on skills that you'll be coding or you'll be configuring, right? I think that the translation part is extremely important, George. And I think we spoke about it many times, right? Where we need the non-technical people to actually be the conveyor and the communicator of the value of cybersecurity and the controls to the business. So tremendous opportunities there. So thank you for answering that question, George. Well, let's talk about a little bit about how you have been navigating this COVID-19 crisis with remote work, and of course you are just like our community. Most of them we go to people and we meet people, right? And it's been virtual, face-to-face for us so far, right? So how's work getting done?
It's been very stressful. I'm married. My wife and I both have full-time jobs. So, being on conference calls throughout the day, we've got to kind of juggle our schedules so that I take this time slot, you take that time slot. We've got a small child, so, juggling childcare in addition to all of that is a challenge. Val, I know you're kind of in the same boat. I think that for me has underscored how I manage my team, how I lead my team, how we communicate with the rest of the organization, knowing that we're not going to be at 100% capacity right now. I'm personally working nights and weekends to kind of make sure things are getting done. That's not necessarily that unusual. But it's been a real challenge, making sure that you're not over exerting yourself. I think at this point we know that it's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. So taking time off if you need it, everyone will totally understand that, and not just understand, but they'll support you. They'll call and check in and say, how are you doing? And hey, can I do anything for you? People are sending flowers or cookies to folks just to kind of keep the connection up. So gosh, there's so many things you can do, but I've made a point of reaching out to all my staff, having weekly staff meetings, or doing weekly or daily check-ins for folks, just to see that face. We're this morning we had an all IT coffee half hour. So we all, signed up early for a Zoom session, and we had coffee together and just chatted. And, frankly, I think it's a lot of fun. You don't typically get to see the inside of people's houses, and it's a little bit more intimate, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, just look behind me. I mean,
the collection.
I collect vintage toys from when I was a kid, and I've also taken up as a hobby a couple years ago painting. I do spray paint pop art, so You can see my my project in progress as we speak. I'm doing a little Transformer Starscream. It's actually a pretty big painting, but I think you need outlets like that, whether it's cooking and grilling, whether it's going for walks, right? A lot of folks, their stress management was going to the gym. How do you do that today? I from what I hear, weight equipment on Craigslist is going for it's like the price of gold. So you've got to navigate your own way and understand enough about yourself to know what you need. But as leaders, again, we have to make sure that people aren't disconnected. That depression is a real thing. I was talking to one of my friends whose kid is home from college, and she's still taking classes online, but she's really dealing with a depression. She doesn't have access to her friends or her her significant other, or seeing having access to labs or being able to go have fun in the city that she was in. I think all of that plays into making sure that people are okay. And it's this is going to go on for a while, so we need to make sure we're doing our self-care.
Well, thank you, George, and really thanks for taking on this assignment on top of all that you're doing and juggling around. Well, that's a great insight into personally how you are dealing with things. What do you think in terms of considering that the bandwidth as well as the way we've been protecting our businesses and our organizations? Apart from the random phishing emails that we're seeing and all the scams and spams that are going right, where do you see the focus should be for the other leaders from protecting the organization side? Because this is going to go probably longer, right?
So it's a Winston Churchill quote from World War II, but he said, "Never waste a good crisis," right? So I think people are on board now in ways they haven't been before. If you don't have a pandemic plan or a disaster recovery plan, business continuity, now's a great time to start. And
living it.
We're living it. So I think if you had trouble building a case for why you needed to do those things, this is the case. The case has been made. I think there are lots of folks who do regular tabletop exercises. We at SMU have done them over the years, and a pandemic was one of the ones we've done. Not to say that we were more or less prepared than other schools, but I think having a team that's worked together, that trusts one another, all of those things are the real glue that holds your organization together. It's not necessarily doing the exercise itself. It's not necessarily having that knowledge. That's helpful. Having a playbook is helpful. Right. But at the end of the day, we're people. And we, like I said in the beginning, we came together as a community to work with one another, right? Community is one of the core habits that I focused on in the book. But I've said for years that the number one key to success in security is relationships. So again, it's hard to have and maintain and build relationships via webinar, via the phone. It's possible. Hopefully you made those connections before, and hopefully you're continuing to invest in those relationships today. Trust is so hard to build and to maintain, and can be broken so easily. That's how you lead, right? That's I think one of the takeaways is, oh my gosh, you don't want to be the guy that's always using fear to motivate people, because if you were today, your relationship bank account is empty. You don't have anything to draw on. And I think we've got to continue that moving forward, not just inside the security team, but inside our whole organizations, in our communities, as a country. That's I think one of the biggest challenges is that, it's hard to have a conversation with folks. There's so many landmines that you have to navigate now, that it's harder than maybe it needs to be.
True, very true. All right, George, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for your insights. This is great. I think all the nuggets that we got from here are going to be definitely useful, not only for the students who are getting into this industry, but also for the leaders who are leaving what you are leaving through, right? And this is kind of exciting, and will help us navigate this through. So in closing, I wanted to share that this has been a great, I would say, start for our Society of Mentors sessions, and we will have this at least on a weekly basis. We have lined up 12 of your colleagues in the community, in the CFF community, who are going to be, and I am sure you met some of them. So the next announcement I wanted to make is next Tuesday, we will be doing a similar webinar. We'll be recording it. We'll be trying to get as many participants live as possible. And this CFF live session will be with Paul Rains, our very good friend from United Nations. He's been a friend from the very beginning at the foundation of CFF. And we have had some interesting chats, just like you and I had, George. And I believe there will be another excellent session. But thank you, George, for sharing your thoughts, your personal, your professional guidance, how you're navigating through this crisis, and how we can all learn from each other. And with that, I will promise to end this on time, get everybody back to business. Lunch hour still has probably another 30 minutes, so if you want to go grab something. But thank you again for joining us. Thank you, George, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, Val. Take care.
Yes, bye.